Pause for a moment and take your mind's eye and travel with me now, way back, far back, to an eastern country. Yes, the very distant eastern country of Africa. Young Chiamaka, an African girl, is enjoying the nature that surrounds her. The birds singing and the smell of the lush, thick green vegetation that surrounds her excites her, and she stretches and smiles as she fills her lungs with the fresh, unpolluted air. In spite of strict commands from the village elders not to mix different flowers together, she cannot help herself, and she picks several flowers to make a diverse bouquet. Chiamaka means God is gorgeous, and looking at this bouquet, she could see why she was thus named. She comes to an opening and see her friends playing, singing, and dancing to one of her favorite African folk songs. Suddenly, a net engulfs them, and they are all dragged through the forest. There are others of her fellow black brothers and sisters there. They are also tied and chained. Much to her dismay, she sees her own mother and witnesses as they strip her mother of her clothing and forces her mother onto a waiting ship that smells like death itself. While Chiamaka is still trying to make sense of her situation, she too is stripped of her clothing and chained in a dark, overcrowded room. The ship begins on its voyage across the deep blue sea. Many of the people in that room get sick and vomit, but no one cleans up after them. Was this the punishment for mixing the flowers that the elders had warned about? Chiamaka cries and begs for mercy during the entire 3-week voyage, but neither the pale-colored people nor the gods seem to hear her cry. More and more death seemed like a better option than the journey she now was on.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Bought and sold again, she's eventually carted off to a plantation, a cotton plantation. There she sees another slave girl singing. She's singing a familiar African song of hope. Chiamaka finds herself thinking, how can she sing that song in this strange land?
Sun up to sundown, taking that cotton. Sun up to sundown, whipped by the master. Sun up to sundown, chains and shackles. No more auction block for me. No more auction block for me. No more
Yes, it is true. While on the plantation, the Africans used music and rhyme to talk of freedom and to speak of ways to escape the plantation.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Chiamaka learns a new religion. It is about the God that created everything. She is taught that although God is not in agreement with slavery, it is still a requirement that she be obedient to those put over her. It is a bit confusing at first, but she gains great comfort in knowing that in the next life, there will be better. Although religion was taught to all slaves, not all were as accepting as Chiamaka. Others fought and rebelled. Still others ran away and helped others to escape. In spite of the seeming difference between the two, there was one uniting theme that joined them all together. Neither would let their circumstances dictate who they were or who they would become. This was a sentiment of so many others that had gone on before, like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who preferred to face the burning furnace than to be slaves to a false system of worship, or Daniel, who preferred to face hungry lions than to be a slave who refused to reverence his God. So it was with a slave girl who came to be dubbed Harriet Tubman. After being a witness to several senseless beatings and herself suffering injury as a result of not wanting to participate in such senseless punishment, she determined to free herself. She successfully did so at the age of 29, and like many other runaways, returned south to free many other slaves.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
As could be imagined, Harriet was not alone in her fight to secure liberty for her black brothers and sisters. However, after the slaves were emancipated, there were still other civil liberties to defend. Consequently, there was a need for a different type of fighter. Some, like Malcolm X, preached aggression and violence as a means to effect the change needed, while others, like Martin Luther King Jr., chose passive, nonviolent ways of challenging the system. Although the Africans were now physically free, there were now some who now chose to be enslaved by a different type of master. Mental slavery, some came to call it.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom slave. I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord.